Then we talked for a while about this reporting hierarchy, and I think we'll talk about this more as we come to some of the presentations that are about to come and talk in terms of certification. But really, if you think about this as a framework of how a metric would have a life cycle, you start with just defining a metric, right? It's let's use PUE as an example because most folks understand what that is. It's the power that goes into the facility divided by the power to the IT equipment. Fairly simple, objective definition. And as soon as you define it, people start reporting things about it, right? Oh, my PUE is 2.0, mine's 2.6, mine's 1.6, mine's 1.1. But without some kind of standardization or certification or specification, you really have no idea what those things are. And that's where we got talked about the transparency again. So the next step would seem to be, in most life cycles of metrics, would be this idea of audit or verification. You know, expose some of the ways that you measured things, even if there's not a standard or a guideline involved. You bring a third party in for a verification and you say, oh, this is the things that I used to measure. Somebody could look at it and go, yeah, it seems reasonable to me. I've verified that you're reporting this and it's a reasonably accurate number. The next step after that would be to get some kind of a specification about this. You must measure this at these points in this amount of time, in this frequency, average things this way, have a detailed specification. And what happens is each time you move down this hierarchy, you get better transparency, you get more information about how the metric was taken, and more confidence in the number that I can actually say, oh, this 1.1 means the same as my 1.3, or at least they're comparable. I'm not comparing something that's completely different. And the final step would be to take a standards body like an ISO or an ANSI or the work that ASHRAE does, for example, and be able to make it, verify the process that you've used to vet that specification and turn it into an actual standard. Now, when you get to the level of specification or standard, you could actually have a certification process that went along with it, so that now you have a third party that says this is done exactly according to the procedure. I'm very confident that this number is correct, and again, you're increased transparency and increased confidence in the metric. So thinking about that for all these life cycle metrics, the life cycle of the metrics, we're at the definition and reporting stage for a lot of the things around data center efficiency. There's not a lot in the industry today, and we're working on getting more of them out there. And I think it'll take some time to move down through that hierarchy. The rest of the discussion we had around the general kind of metrics were, what other areas of metrics do we think that there's need for work in? You can see some of the things that we talked about, financial and capacity and utilization in terms of the different areas of facilities and IT. Performance and useful work, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, the idea of how are your systems split across production and development and disaster recovery. There was a discussion about, we're measuring a lot about energy efficiency in the data center. What other areas? Are there e-waste? Is there water? And the feeling in the group in general was water might be a missed opportunity for most data center operators today. We're not tracking water. The feeling is that probably once we get energy under control, water's probably just in the offing in terms of the next thing that we're going to have to do. And then the building metrics, in general, the ideas of LEEDs and BREEAMs and the certifications, Energy Stars for data centers that are coming up and have been talked about already a little bit, might be areas for more intense study from this group. So now we'll split and move into the green grid proxies discussion. The idea that the green grid has always had it since it's formed, and how many know what the green grid is? Most everybody? So green grid as a data center efficiency organization, I always have said that the sort of holy grail for the green grid is to be able to define what useful work goes on inside of a data center and then produce a productivity metric that takes that useful work and divides it by the energy that is consumed, and voila, you've got a power efficiency kind of thing, or an energy efficiency. It's very difficult to measure the real work that goes on inside of a data center. There's tens of thousands of machines, potentially tens of thousands of applications. They're doing all kinds of different things at different times. And so what the green grid is proposing in order to move this discussion forward is that we use a proxy for measuring that. And a proxy is something that is closely correlated to the actual thing they're trying to measure, but maybe cheaper, faster, more easily it's easy to measure. And I'll give you some examples that I always use. We always talk about miles per gallon for the EPA it really is a proxy for the measure of the efficiency of the car. There's a lot of different measures that could go into that, but miles per gallon is simple to use. I can measure it myself. I can measure it in a couple of days and get an idea of how things are going. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is a good proxy for the economy, right? People understand it's only the stock prices of 30 big companies, But people know that if it's going up, things are generally good, and if it's going down, things are generally not so good. So that's the idea behind a proxy as an indicator of the real thing. And so what the green grid has done is proposed 8 different potential proxies for productivity. I'm trying to think of another word that starts with P so that I can keep my alliteration going. But and is seeking feedback from folks like you in the industry in order to be able to select which ones of these might work. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these proxies. There are 8 of them. There's a paper that's published. You can go to thegreengrid.org, and it's right up at the top. Talks about the productivity proxies paper. We would love to have your feedback. It tells about how to give feedback online there. The proxies break down into a couple of groups. There's an energy proxy that's called Data Center Energy Productivity, DCEP, which is really a kind of a very complete, very academic measure of proposed measure of data center efficiency. We've done some work on it, and it does do some great stuff, but it's very difficult to collect. And there's 2 subjective terms in how it's defined, so it's a little difficult to compare. And then there's CPU-based proxies that are based on the CPU utilization of the machines, the servers inside the data center. Obviously, they don't account for things like storage, and they don't account for networking. But as an indicator, an indicator closely tied to the actual work that's being done, that's what's being proposed. Today, we've gathered already some feedback. These were announced they were announced a little bit before Christmas. We talked about them at the Green Grid's technical forum at the first week of February. And these are some preliminary results that we've gotten back from them. I've just listed the 8 proxies across the bottom. And what I'm showing here is the proxy results or survey results we've got from before the DCP conference here. And then I've added on the DCP folks, the response that I got during the DCP conference. So you can see that there's only 2 so far that have got a better than 50% answer to the question of, would you use this in your data center? Right? Number 4 is a proxy called bits per kilowatt hour that measures the output of the data center just in terms of a bit stream. And then number 6 is CPU utilization weighted by spec power results. And so again, I'd invite you to go do this. I have paper copies of the survey that I'm happy to hand out. You can go to the paper off of the Green Grid website, and it'll tell you how to get onto the survey that's on there. So we're collecting the information about the proxies. Would you use them? And then the discussion that we had on the slides a few minutes ago about the criteria of a good metric. We're using the same kind of criteria down here in the Green Grid and asking people what are most important to you as a data center operator in terms of the criteria. And so again, you can have an opportunity to input into that. And again, these are preliminary results, but they show that if you do the statistics on these things, you get a band of uncertainty that says really anything that's in between those 2 bands is the same number statistically. We can't tell the difference between it. So the only 2 criteria so far that are standing out is ease of use has come out as the most significantly important. Lower is better on this, is more important on this scale. So ease of use has come out as the most important, significantly important one. And the idea of being able to use one of these metrics during the commissioning process, for example, has come out as one of the least important right now. So again, the only way we get better at this is by getting a whole bunch of feedback, getting everybody's opinion in here. So I'll keep encouraging you to go look at that. We're going to use the feedback that you give in terms of how each metric compares to a baseline. Is it better than the baseline? Is it the same as the baseline, or is it worse than the baseline? For these 11 or 12 criteria. And so it's a little bit involved in terms of reading the paper, going to the survey and getting it, but the feedback that we get is going to be invaluable. And we'll collect this feedback for about 90 days and then report back to you, the industry, on the results. More than likely what we'll end up with is we'll have 1 or 2 of the proxies that come back looking promising. We'll do some additional study work and come out with that definition that we've been talking about in our hierarchy of things and start working our way down through that hierarchy. So I think that's it for metrics.